Some teams can take the easiest schedule in the league and spin it into gold, with many playoff appearances, several Super Bowl appearances, and even 6 different teams walking out of the season as Super Bowl champions. Yet many others simply can't take that gift and make anything out of it. These are the teams we're going to be looking at today. We will be ranking the 10 worst teams in the Super Bowl era who had that season's easiest strength of schedule. And, as per usual, we will be using C-Score to make these determinations. Also, as per usual, a deeper explanation of C-Score is available in the description of this video down below. It's time to put a spotlight on these poor unfortunate teams. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are ready to roll. We start at number 10 with the easiest schedule from 1988 belonging to the Denver Broncos. This last place ranking was a bit circumstantial. Their schedule wasn't horrifically bad and wouldn't rank as the worst in many other seasons, but here they are. They were 8-8, middle of the road in scoring, but they were bottom 10 in points allowed, all adding up to a negative 7.531 C-score. The Broncos ended the 1980s by winning the AFC and advancing to the Super Bowl 3 out of 4 seasons. This was the season in between where they temporarily conceded control of the conference. They were unlucky in one-score games, only managing a 2-4 record, but they had way too many horrible defensive performances, giving up 39 points or more in 4 games, including one game where they allowed 55 points, a bit of a precursor to the following season's Super Bowl. Those games were all on the road, with their overall road record of 2-6 doing as much to sink them as anything else. The easiest road in 2008 belonged to the Buffalo Bills, ranking them here at number 9. They were unable to conjure a winning record or a positive point differential against their slate of opponents, going 7-9 and being outscored by 6 points. They were fairly solid at points allowed, but were bottom 10 in scoring, culminating in a C-score of negative 7.83. In the midst of a long playoff drought that they didn't realize was only halfway done, the Bills jumped out to a 4-0 record, almost entirely on the back of the easiest part of that easy schedule, beating 4 teams who finished the season with 16 total wins between them. Once the meat of their schedule kicked in, they were only able to go 3-9, including a complete offer in the division, getting swept by the Patriots, Dolphins, and the Jets. Most surprisingly of all, in their last 3 home games, they scored a combined 6 points. Naturally, those were all losses, and the Bills shuffled off to Buffalo as postseason absentees once again. It's this team again. The 2012 Indianapolis Colts will not leave us alone, and they come in here at number 8. Yes, they were 11-5. Yes, they made the playoffs. And yes, they played the easiest schedule in the league and still found a way to be outscored and fail to finish in the top half of the league in both points scored and points allowed. Their C-score is negative 8.176. Now, Colts fans are not going to have any problem with this season, nor should they. The Peyton Manning era ended with an epic crash from perennial Super Bowl contender to the worst team in the league just the season before. To bounce back and make the playoffs in such short order had to feel great. But facts are facts, and no amount of smoke and mirrors can obscure them. In addition to the aforementioned, the Colts found a way to go 9-1 in one-score games while losing 3 separate games by 20-plus points. This Colts team is a great story, both on and off the field, but C-Score only knows the numbers. The first season with a 16-game schedule brings us to our number 17, the 1978 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa was only able to go 5-11 against the league's easiest schedule, but it was a relatively competitive 5-11 with only a negative 18 point differential. Scoring was difficult for this crew, but they were certainly good at stopping others from scoring. All told, their C-score was minus 9.516. In just their third season of existence, the Bucs entered 1978 with a franchise win-loss record of 2-26, with those 2 wins coming at the end of the 77 season after an 0-26 beginning. To say they improved is borderline disparaging, but they really were showing signs of life, at least defensively. 7 times they allowed 14 or fewer points in a game. Unfortunately for them, they only went 4-3 in those games. Their only other win was a 33-19 triumph over the Chicago Bears, where they tied their franchise record for most points in a game, a record that would last for another 3 years and 1 month. In the number 6 spot, we have the Miami Dolphins from 1989. They were middle of the road offensively with their typically weak running game, and their good, but not as good as usual, passing game. They were bad defensively though, 7th worst in the league in points allowed. They went 8-8 and logged a -10.779 C-score. In the season after the 1988 Broncos, the Dolphins similarly had a less than awful overall strength of schedule, but it just so happened to rank last in this particular season. The AFC East was there for the taking in '89, with the Buffalo Bills winning it at just 9-7. The difference was Buffalo's 6-2 division record against Miami's 4-4, with Miami eating the season sweep. The Dolphins allowed 26 points or more 8 times. They went 0-8 in those games. They allowed 23 points or fewer 8 times. They went 8-0 in those games. As was often the case during Dan Marino's career, even a decent defense would have meant oh so much. We've been seeing some old school Seattle Seahawks teams lately, and here at number 5 is the 1982 version. At 4-5, they had trouble scoring even against the league's easiest schedule, finishing 2nd from the bottom in the league. They were much better defensively at 5th in points allowed, but their C-score lingers here at -12.716. We thought about leaving out the 1982 season, but the easiest schedule is the easiest schedule, no matter the length of that schedule. Seattle thought they were being productive during the strike, firing both their head coach and general manager while the season was on hold. While they won their first 2 games after the season resumed to level their record at 2-2, it never turned around enough to make a total success out of it. Mike McCormick stepped aside as head coach following the season, bringing in Chuck Knox. That provided some elixir as the Seahawks made it all the way to the AFC title game. We get a decent jump in C-score at number 4 with the 1973 New England Patriots, the only team in the countdown from the 14-game schedule era. Being 5-9, outscored by 42 points, and 16th in both points scored and points allowed, brought forth a C-score of -14.911 for the Patriots, who were mostly dreadful during the late 60s and early 70s. Indeed, the Patriots were downright horrific in 1972, ranking among the worst single-season teams of the entire Super Bowl era. They only increased their win total by 2 in 1973, but they turned around their point differential by 212 points, improving by just over 15 points per game. It still couldn't add up to overall success though, and 2 separate 3-game losing streaks, including one to start the season, left them generally non-competitive but with hope for the future. In time, the Patriots did get more competitive, and were legitimate contenders, and only suffered one more losing season through 1980. We've made it to number 3, and we will once again visit with a St. Louis Rams team, this one from 2010. In the horrific NFC West of that season, the Rams went 7-9, getting outscored by 39 points, but with a much improved defense, finishing in the top half of the league in points allowed, while being 6th worst in points scored. Their C-score is -14.984. This Rams team came off the backs of the single worst 3-year run in the entire Super Bowl era. These 7 wins were more than they had in those 3 years combined. They entered the final game of the season at 7-8 with a chance to win their division, but they fell in meek fashion to the Seahawks. So while the Rams were certainly better this season, they couldn't have gotten too much worse. The truth is that this was still a fairly bad team that couldn't take advantage of their historically weak division by only going 3-3 within it. At number 2 is our second team from this list that made the playoffs, the 1998 Arizona Cardinals. Despite a 9-7 record against the league's easiest schedule, the Cards were still outscored by 53 points. Their mid-level performance in points scored was countered by their bottom 10 performance in points allowed, all for a C-score of -15.356. The Cardinals were indeed one of 2 teams on this list to make the playoffs, but they are the only team to have won a playoff game, going into Texas Stadium to defeat the Dallas Cowboys in one of the biggest upsets in playoff history. While that is certainly noteworthy and ultimately makes the Cardinals season a success, it doesn't mask this team's issues. At 6-7, they won their last 3 games by a total of 8 points, including one in overtime, going 7-3 overall in one-possession games. Their 4-12 record the season before and their 6-10 record the season after more closely align with this team's actual quality. And at number 1 are the 1997 New Orleans Saints, who actually tied for the easiest schedule in the league that season, one of 3 seasons where this took place. Still, they only went 6-10 against that schedule. They were outscored by 90 points, and they were dead last in the league in scoring, despite a middle-of-the-road ranking in points allowed. Their C-score? -18.238. The Saints' fortunes had taken a downturn after a period of competitiveness during the late 80s and early 90s. In an effort to fix those fortunes, they hired a Hall of Fame player and a Super Bowl winning head coach. Saints fans know all too well who this is, the one and only Mike Ditka. New Orleans did improve from 3-13 the season before to 6-10, but therein lies the danger of judging teams solely by their record. They took just as many double-digit losses with 7, got shut out twice, and scored in single digits a rather astonishing 6 times. Not surprisingly, they went 0-6 in those games. The Ditka era never did take off in New Orleans, eventually leading to this calamity. Taking a look at the top 10 as a whole, it should be noted that no franchise appears here twice, although the Seahawks just missed doing so with their 2006 team coming in at 11th. There were only 2 jumps of more than 2 points in C-score, from number 5 to number 4, and again from number 2 to number 1. In fact, less than half a point separated spots 2 through 4. None of these teams would go on to win a Super Bowl within a decade of their respective seasons on this list, with some not having won it at all. Thank you so much for joining us today and for making it to the end of the video. Our further attempt to include different teams on our countdown was mostly successful. I'd give it a C+, and wouldn't you know, C's get degrees. Like the video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to ding that bell for future notifications. Speaking of which, the channel recently surpassed the subscriber benchmark. I'm so humbled and thankful for the support, and ready to continue along. Let me know your thoughts on this video or about anything else you have on your mind. And if you just want to take the time to rip on me, I want to hear it. It usually gets a good laugh out of me, and there ain't a damn thing wrong with that. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.